The universe has always followed a rhythm we believed was unbreakable, a flawless cosmic score where planets, stars, and wandering objects obey precise mathematical rules written by gravity itself. Every orbit, every curve, every drift through the void has long reinforced one comforting idea: space is predictable. But at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that belief cracked. Not with an explosion or a flash of light, but with silence. For 4 quiet hours, a sequence of high-resolution images sat buried inside a NASA archive, unremarkable and ignored. Then a Doppler reading arrived from the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex, and in a single moment, centuries of physics lost their footing. Interstellar Object 3I-ATLAS was not where it was supposed to be. It didn't slowly drift off course or bend slightly under gravity's pull. According to the telemetry, a mass weighing roughly 33 billion tons had repositioned itself by nearly 300,000 miles. There was no trail, no heat plume, no debris. It was as if the object had made a decision and acted on it. At that instant, the question stopped being where Atlas was going. The real question became far more unsettling. What kind of intelligence can move a mountain through space without leaving any physical trace behind? Under Newtonian mechanics and the law of universal gravitation, motion in space is not a mystery. Once you know an object's mass, speed, and the gravitational influence of bodies like the Sun and Jupiter, its future position becomes a certainty. We can predict trajectories centuries ahead with astonishing precision. This predictable harmony has often been called the music of the spheres. Yet the Goldstone data revealed a rupture in that music. Atlas deviated from its calculated hyperbolic path in a way that suggests controlled movement without propulsion, no expelled mass, no conventional force, just relocation. Through a more advanced theoretical lens, one explanation rises above the rest: metric engineering. A civilization advanced enough would not rely on rockets. It would reshape space-time itself. By creating a localized distortion in higher dimensional space, such an intelligence could shift position instantly without traveling through the distance in between. Before this event, Atlas was categorized as a strange but natural visitor. Observatories worldwide had mapped its flyby with confidence. The equations were settled, then the equations failed. To grasp how impossible this movement truly is, consider inertial mass. In classical physics, relocating a 33 billion-ton object across 300,000 miles would demand energy on the scale of thousands of nuclear detonations. That level of force would light up the solar system in infrared, yet every sensor recorded the same result: nothing. Atlas remained cold. This points to something even more troubling: a mastery over the equivalence principle itself. If gravitational and inertial mass can be manipulated independently, motion no longer requires resistance. Negative energy density becomes a tool, allowing an object to slide through space-time rather than push against it. The direction of the shift was also revealing. Atlas didn't flee. It moved into a more advantageous observational position. From the standpoint of advanced physics, a probe studying a planetary system would seek a gravitational node, a place of maximum stability and visibility. By relocating, Atlas placed itself in a strategic position relative to Earth's orbital plane. This is not how a dead rock behaves. This is how an observer positions itself. Images under analysis suggest a surface unlike ice or dust. Instead, the object appears coated in a highly reflective, radar-absorbent metamaterial. Compared to this, human stealth technology looks primitive. The Doppler return was sharp and clean, with no fuzziness that would indicate gas, debris, or fragmentation. Atlas is a single rigid structure, not a loose natural body. At the smallest scales, space-time itself is a boiling sea of energy. If Atlas can tap into that vacuum energy, it doesn't need fuel. It rides the fabric of reality. As physicists quietly compare notes, a consensus is forming that this was no accident. The movement was a signal. In information theory, a delimiter marks the boundary between datasets. Atlas just drew a line in physical space and said, without words, I am here, and I am not what you think. What happens next depends on us. Our response will reveal whether we are a civilization ready to understand higher dimensions, or one still staring at moving mountains in disbelief. The forensic investigation is only beginning. The Doppler anomaly was the first crack. Now, the coordinates tell a deeper story. Atlas has stabilized itself with a precision that challenges even quantum uncertainty. We are no longer tracking a visitor passing through. We are being observed by something that has chosen to stay. That realization brings us directly to the core of the paralysis gripping the global scientific community, because the relocation of a 3 billion ton object by 300,000 miles doesn't just bend a few equations, it strikes at the foundation of physical law itself. At the heart of this crisis sits the second law of thermodynamics and the conservation of momentum, principles so reliable that modern civilization is built on them. In our universe, order decays into disorder, heat flows from hot to cold, and motion follows predictable rules unless acted upon by force. Nothing simply decides to move, yet Atlas did exactly that. When the object shifted position, it didn't drift or tumble as gravity would dictate. It executed a clean relocation that ignored the inertial blueprint of our solar system. In classical kinematics, moving a mass of this scale would require a thrust so immense it would register as a second sun, even for a brief moment. Instead, every orbiting observatory recorded the same impossible result: a thermal profile indistinguishable from absolute zero, no heat spike, no exhaust plume, no shockwave through space. Motion without consequence. This forces us to confront a radical hypothesis. Atlas is not pushing itself through space, it is pulling space toward itself. Through the lens of advanced theoretical physics, this kind of movement aligns with metric engineering, where space-time becomes the medium of travel rather than an obstacle. If the object can manipulate the structure of space-time at the smallest measurable scales, it doesn't violate Newton's laws. It simply steps around them. The motion becomes a relocation of coordinates, not a journey through distance. Simulations suggest the object may have generated a localized space-time distortion similar to a theoretical warp bubble. In this model, space contracts in front of the object and expands behind it, allowing effective movement without acceleration. From the object's perspective, it remains stationary while the universe rearranges itself. This would explain every anomaly at once. No heat, no inertia, no detectable force. Physics wasn't broken, it was bypassed. Supporting evidence appears in the most subtle data stream of all, gravitational lensing. At the exact moment of relocation, background stars didn't simply bend as expected under mass-induced curvature. They shimmered. For 14 seconds, their light oscillated in a precise geometric rhythm. This pattern suggests a temporary phase shift in the local gravitational constant, something that should not happen naturally. If Atlas briefly altered its own gravitational footprint to slip through higher dimensional spacetime, this shimmering is exactly what we would expect to see. The implications grow darker when surface imaging enters the picture. Natural objects bear scars. Micrometeor impacts, erosion, chaos accumulated over billions of years. Atlas does not. Its exterior displays repeating fractal symmetry, a level of order incompatible with geological entropy. This isn't erosion-resistant rock, it is engineered structure. Materials science offers only one explanation: metamaterials, designed at the atomic level to interact with radiation, energy, and force in ways nature never evolved. Radar imaging hints at a lattice composed of exotic conductive elements arranged with deliberate precision. Such a surface would serve two purposes simultaneously: absorbing incoming radar while functioning as a massive energy collector. Instead of shielding itself from space, ATLAS appears to be harvesting it. This is not camouflage, it is infrastructure. The relocation itself now appears less like an escape and more like optimization. Information theory tells us that a probe seeking maximum data efficiency would move to a gravitational equilibrium point where it could observe continuously without expending energy. By shifting position, ATLAS placed itself into a near-perfect observational alignment, maintaining a constant gaze on Earth while remaining dynamically stable. Nature does not park itself, only intention does. The most unsettling question is timing. For months, ATLAS behaved like a passive interstellar object. Then, without warning, it demonstrated physics beyond our reach. In game theory, this is called a demonstration of dominance, a move designed not to destroy, but to establish hierarchy. By showing us something we cannot replicate or even fully explain, ATLAS has drawn a clear technological boundary. As it settled into its new coordinates, Goldstone detected something else, a low-frequency hum rippling through spacetime itself, not radio waves, not electromagnetic noise, gravitational wave pulses. ATLAS wasn't transmitting a message. It was interacting directly with the structure of the solar system. Observation had shifted into engagement. What the data now suggests is chilling in its simplicity. The relocation was not the event. It was the setup. The images were not the discovery. They were the invitation. And whatever comes next will challenge not just our understanding of technology, but our definition of life itself. The deeper analysts pushed into the data, the clearer one truth became: the relocation was never meant to stand alone. It was a prelude. At precisely 22 UTC, confirmation arrived from Goldstone that the 300,000-mile shift was not a singular maneuver, but the opening move of a station-keeping protocol. In plain terms, ATLAS wasn't passing through. It was settling in. And the implications of that decision ripple far beyond orbital mechanics. In classical celestial physics, there are rare positions known as gravitational equilibrium points, where the pull of two massive bodies balances perfectly with orbital motion. These are cosmic parking spots, but they are notoriously unstable. Even our most advanced space telescopes must constantly adjust their position to remain there. Yet ATLAS executed a docking maneuver into one of these zones with a precision measured in fractions of a millimeter. No thrusters fired, no corrective bursts followed. It simply locked itself into place, as if gravity itself had agreed to cooperate. This marks a clear dividing line in technological eras. If a 3 billion-ton object can perform flawless gravitational docking without propellant, then Newtonian ballistics are no longer the highest form of motion, they are obsolete. What we are witnessing is the operational use of spacetime as a controllable system, not a passive backdrop. ATLAS is not moving within the universe. It is rearranging the universe locally to suit its needs. From a strategic perspective, the choice of position is devastatingly logical. ATLAS now maintains an uninterrupted view of Earth's dayside while preserving constant exposure to solar radiation. It can observe, measure, and analyze our planet continuously without orbital interruptions or energy constraints. This is not exploration, this is surveillance. The placement mirrors what our own engineers would choose: if given infinite technological freedom and a long-term observational objective. The mystery deepens when stability is examined more closely. In the three-body problem, equilibrium points naturally decay, objects drift, corrections are mandatory. Yet every scan confirms the same result. ATLAS is not drifting. Laser telemetry reveals subtle vibrations across its structure, oscillations at subatomic frequencies that should not exist in inert matter. Theoretical models now suggest these vibrations are not a side effect, but a mechanism. By interacting with quantum vacuum fluctuations, ATLAS appears to be anchoring itself directly to space-time. Instead of firing engines to stay in place, it uses the energy of the vacuum itself as a gravitational tether. It is pinning itself to reality. This is not propulsion, it is positional authority. Then came the detail that silenced rooms full of senior physicists. High-resolution radar data revealed that ATLAS's surface is not static. It expands and contracts in a precise 14-second cycle. This behavior matches a piezoelectric response where mechanical stress generates electrical energy. In this case, the stress comes from the solar wind. ATLAS is converting the constant stream of charged particles from the sun directly into power. It is not carrying fuel, it is feeding. At this point, the object stops resembling a machine in any human sense. It functions more like a self-sustaining stellar organism, harvesting energy, maintaining position, and regulating itself without decay. This is energy logistics on a level we have never achieved or even seriously attempted. The final layer of unease emerged from information theory, when researchers applied advanced signal analysis to what was once dismissed as background noise in the images. A pattern emerged. Embedded in the pixel fluctuations was a repeating frequency based on universal constants, not language, not symbols, ratios, relationships. A code that assumes the observer understands atomic structure, fundamental forces, and the geometry of reality itself. This is not a message meant for the public. It is a handshake designed for a civilization that has reached a specific scientific threshold. ATLAS is not broadcasting to everyone, it is filtering. The conclusion is unavoidable. ATLAS did not arrive accidentally. It revealed itself deliberately, step by step, escalating only as our instruments became capable of noticing. The relocation was the call. The positioning is the test. What follows depends entirely on whether we can recognize what we are being shown. The object remains silent in every conventional sense, yet the gravitational wave spectrum tells a different story. ATLAS is active, it is engaged, and as it holds its impossible position with effortless precision, one reality settles in: humanity is no longer unobserved. We are no longer alone in our own backyard. That realization forces a far more uncomfortable reassessment of our place in the cosmic hierarchy, because ATLAS is no longer behaving like an object that arrived by chance. It is behaving like an intelligence executing a long-planned protocol. Once its position stabilized, the data streams shifted. The focus moved away from motion and toward behavior. What scientists began noticing next was not where ATLAS was, but how deliberately it was interacting with its surroundings. The gravitational wave pulses detected after station keeping were not random fluctuations. Their timing was precise, their amplitude consistent, and their repetition unmistakable. This was not background noise. It was structured output. Unlike electromagnetic signals, gravitational waves pass through matter almost entirely unimpeded. They cannot be blocked, jammed, or easily detected without advanced instrumentation. If you wanted to announce your presence only to civilizations capable of sophisticated physics, this would be the ideal channel. ATLAS was no longer whispering through images, it was speaking directly to space-time. Further analysis revealed that these pulses were synchronized with subtle changes in Atlas's vibrational state. Every 14 seconds, as the surface lattice expanded and contracted, a corresponding gravitational ripple propagated outward. This coupling between mechanical motion and space-time distortion suggests a level of engineering where structure, energy, and gravity are unified into a single system. ATLAS is not a passive mass creating gravitational effects simply by existing. It is actively modulating gravity as a functional tool. At this point, the distinction between technology and biology begins to blur. In terrestrial terms, a system that harvests energy, maintains homeostasis, responds to its environment, and communicates selectively would meet several criteria we associate with life. Yet ATLAS does this without chemistry, without metabolism, and without reproduction as we understand it. It exists as a self-contained process rather than a machine assembled from parts. This challenges not just physics, but biology. The timeline now becomes critical. ATLAS did not immediately announce itself upon entering the solar system. It waited. It observed quietly, behaving in ways consistent with natural objects. Only after months of tracking, once our sensors, models, and confidence had fully committed to a predictable narrative, did it break that narrative. This timing suggests intent. In intelligence analysis, such behavior is described as calibration. You observe first, then act once you understand how the observer interprets reality. By violating expectations in a controlled, undeniable way, ATLAS forced the scientific community into a diagnostic response. Are our models flexible enough to adapt, or do they collapse under contradiction? In this sense, the relocation was less about movement and more about measurement. ATLAS wasn't testing propulsion, it was testing us. As the datasets expanded, another pattern emerged. ATLAS was not interacting with the solar system uniformly. Its gravitational modulation showed slight directional bias, consistently favoring Earth-facing vectors. This is not accidental. It implies targeted focus. Whatever ATLAS is doing, Earth is the subject of interest, not the Sun, not the outer planets, and not the interstellar medium it traveled through. This raises a deeply unsettling possibility. ATLAS may not be an explorer at all. It may be infrastructure. In advanced theoretical models, long-lived civilizations deploy autonomous sentinels to monitor emerging technological species. These sentinels do not communicate openly. They watch, evaluate, and wait. Intervention, if it ever occurs, is based on demonstrated capability rather than curiosity. The absence of overt communication may itself be the message. ATLAS is not asking who we are, it is assessing what we can become. The embedded constants found in the image noise support this interpretation. They are not instructions, they are benchmarks. They reveal nothing new, but they confirm whether the observer recognizes what is already there. Meanwhile, ATLAS remains perfectly stable, perfectly silent, and perfectly unconcerned with being discovered. It does not hide, yet it does not reveal more than necessary. This is not fear, it is confidence, the kind that comes from existing on a time scale far longer than human history and a technological curve far steeper than our own. As humanity debates definitions, models, and risks, ATLAS continues its quiet operation, converting solar wind into energy, anchoring itself to spacetime, and broadcasting through gravity itself. The age of accidental discovery is over. What we are experiencing now is deliberate exposure. And the most sobering thought of all is this: if ATLAS wanted to make itself undeniable to the public, it could have done so instantly. The fact that it hasn't suggests that whatever comes next is not meant for everyone, but only for those capable of understanding what is unfolding. That selective restraint changes the entire nature of the encounter because it tells us Atlas is not here to shock or intimidate, it is here to evaluate progression. Every choice it has made so far reflects a careful balance between visibility and ambiguity. Enough evidence to be undeniable to experts, but never enough to trigger panic or force disclosure. This is not how a threat behaves, it is how a system conducts a long-term assessment. As weeks of observation turned into months, researchers noticed something even more difficult to explain. Atlas was not only stable in position, it was dynamically responsive to changes within Earth's technological environment. Subtle fluctuations in its gravitational wave emissions began correlating with major bursts of human activity. Satellite launches, large-scale radar sweeps, deep space transmissions, even nuclear reactor startups all coincided with minor but measurable shifts in Atlas's output. Atlas is not here to conquer, communicate, or explore. It is here to witness a transition. Whether that transition is technological, social, or existential remains unknown. But whatever happens next will not be accidental. And as we move into the final stage of this analysis, one question looms larger than all others. If Atlas is waiting, what exactly is it waiting for? If Atlas is waiting, then the most important variable is no longer its technology, its position, or its power source. The variable is us. Everything it has done so far suggests that the final trigger will not come from space, but from Earth itself. Atlas has already demonstrated that it can move at will, harvest energy indefinitely, and anchor itself to space-time with precision that makes our best instruments look primitive. There is no remaining technical mystery about its capability. The mystery is the condition it is monitoring.